Scare away all the invading Hoomanz. A stealth adventure game packed with coziness and humor, featuring non-combat gameplay and family-friendly content. Play as Shu, the mythical guardian of planet Earth, with a hidden dual nature. Darkness is nature's friend, light is its enemy. Welcome to episode 52 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Hoomanz. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. There isn't really a story in this game. Basically, you're a forest critter scaring off humans to save nature. There are 3 different areas in this game, each with 4 missions for a total of 12. There is also a tutorial. The first 3 missions in each area follow the same pattern. Scare off humans, typically somewhere between 10 and 30, and save what the game refers to as flappy friends. The flappy friends are basically your collectible and entirely optional, but it's simple enough to save some trapped creatures. In terms of actually scaring off humans, you do not have to scare every human on every mission. After scaring off a certain amount, usually no more than half, the exit gate will open. For example, on one mission there were 28 humans, and when I scared off the 12th, the game said, "That's enough, the gate has opened." Personally, I wanted to scare off every human, and I did so on every mission. You probably put 2 and 2 together and figured out that the last mission in each area is a boss encounter. I hesitate to actually say boss encounter because there isn't really a boss. It's more so a mission where you don't scare off humans and instead you have to sneak past them all to hit a button and destroy some machinery. These boss levels are pretty much the best parts of the game and should have been the standard. The final mission in particular is pretty phenomenal. I will go much more in depth on that statement in tension. The first boss encounter has an area with 3 different colored switches for you to hit, which will open and close certain doors. In this area, you will open and close those doors to guide the humans into separate rooms, then trap them. This allows you to sneak through unbothered, then approach the machine. The next boss encounter has humans quickly skiing past, as you have to dash through and, again, press a button to destroy a machine. The final mission requires you to start by scaring off select targets, which disables certain security measures, then again go and hit a big button. As I mentioned, there are 3 separate areas in this game, which includes the forest, winter, and lava. This naming does not make a lot of sense until you see the achievements on Steam. Forest makes perfect sense, but then we go to winter? I was a bit lost until I completed the achievement that said, scare all humans on the mountain. Lava is also a bit weird for an area name, but again, in the achievements, it was referred to as volcano. So in reality, the 3 locales in this game are the forest, mountain, and volcano. I think that sounds a lot better than forest, winter, and lava. Wouldn't you agree? In terms of the actual levels, they are solid enough. There are 2 main mechanics present, pink bushes for hiding, and certain slopes or elevations that allow for almost platforming-esque sections. Keep in mind there is no jump in this game and only a dash, but effectively you are still maneuvering across certain platforms to reach vantage points or simply progress through the level. In each area, there is an environmental hazard that can be used to stress humans. In the forest, there are leaf piles. In the mountain, weak ice spots. And in the volcano, would appear to be similar to geysers. There will also be cans, bottles, snowballs, or magma balls scattered around each level depending on your current locale. Scattered throughout the entire level will be light sources placed by the humans. In some of these areas, there will be switches that will turn the lights on or off. Some switches can also be activated to move platforms for dashing across, or for moving walls to change what areas are illuminated by lights. The only other thing to really talk about is the ice present in the levels on the mountain. This should not come as a surprise, but when you walk on ice, you have much less control and are sliding around. However, the exciting part is that enemies do the same, so walking into an icy area is a lot of chaotic fun. I usually like to comment on player creativity available in mission design. That is somewhat present. In each mission, there will basically be certain areas populated by humans, and you can choose the order in which you go to each area. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to scare all the humans, which means you don't even have to explore each area. So yes, there is room for player creativity, but it's to a very minor degree. You play as the adorable forest creature, Shu. In the darkness, you are quick, but in the light, you are slow. There is no sprint, jump, or crouch, only a dash that can be used to move from one elevated point to another. Or, of course, just simply dashing around. As Shu, you also have access to an ability that lures an enemy to your location. This is an audio bait and can be thought of almost like the purr of a cat. Dashing, baiting, and carrying items all drain your stamina. I hesitate to call it stamina, but there really isn't a better word for it. This stamina wheel, or bar, recharges more quickly in the dark, giving you some extra motivation to stay out of the light. There are several items that can be picked up, including bottles, cans, snowballs, and magma balls, which can be thrown to stress out humans, each of which has a different effective range and throwable distance. There is even a little decoy plush that will use your bait ability once dropped. Stress is the key in this game, as you cannot scare off a human unless they are first stressed. Once they are stressed, you can move in close and use your scare ability. This is basically the stealth takedown equivalent and does not require any sort of resource to activate. The only rule is that you must be in the dark, further proving the importance of staying out of the light. This scare ability activates in a circle around your character, so you actually have a little bit of room to work with. I should also mention that you can unlock different skins throughout the game, but I'm not 100% sure on the unlock criteria. I seemed to unlock them regularly after completing missions, but as I was always scaring off every single human, I'm not sure if the reward is for doing so or just finishing the level. As I mentioned, general movement is very limited, but that doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, I think it feels quite good. Maneuvering as Shu feels good. However, my one complaint is the dash. Perhaps it's just my error and I can accept that, but many times lining up the dash was a nightmare and the distance it traveled would feel inconsistent. Again, however, this could be my own personal struggle. The basic enemies in Hoomanz are humans. Detection is decent enough, with you being completely invisible in the dark even from up close, and with you being easily spotted if you step into the light even from a decent distance away. When walking through the darkness, enemies use flashlights, which basically activates their vision cone within the dark. One of my favorite things about the enemies in this game is how they react to you. If you are spotted, you are not hunted down or harmed in any way, shape, or form. You are simply picked up and hugged, which is absolutely adorable. However, as the Steam page states, Shu hates hugs. As the game progresses, you will come across some humans wearing helmets. This simply means that they must be stressed twice. After you stress them once, the helmet will fall and now they are just like everyone else. The scarier and more exciting enemy type is pretty similar to the norm, but they have a unique quote-unquote weapon. This is simply an extendable claw. If you are spotted by one of the claw wielders, after a short delay, that claw is coming, and it can be very jarring when you get grabbed. You may think you're safe, then all of a sudden you get yoinked right back to the claw man. In the final mission, some humans will be operating drones. If you are spotted by a drone, it will follow you around and alert others to your location, and believe me, it will not lose your trail. Speaking of losing your trail, escaping the humans is pretty simple. While the detection is pretty solid, if you alert a human, you can pretty quickly dash out of their line of sight and you're pretty much good to go. The same can be said with the pink bushes, which are this game's version of tall grass. Entering these bushes practically makes you completely invisible, and I was never found a single time while inside. Aside from the actual humans, the one other threat to discuss is the trap. To put it as simply as possible, these are basically bear traps scattered around on some maps. If you walk into one of these traps, you are stuck for a bit before you can move. Naturally, getting stuck means you are very vulnerable and won't be able to get away from any approaching human. These traps will reset after a short delay. I was always very happy to see these traps since they are arguably your strongest weapon. If you bait a human into chasing you and hide behind a trap, they will get stuck and stressed, allowing you to scare them off. Let me tell you, when they were around, I was around. Using my bait ability and standing in the light to draw in an unsuspecting human was probably my favorite stress plus fear combo. Hoomanz is not a difficult game, at least not in the usual sense. The only difficult part of this game is having the patience to actually scare off the enemies. I want to start by saying this probably isn't as big of an issue if you aren't trying to scare off everyone. However, I wanted and did scare off everyone in the entire game. The stress first mechanic is not necessarily something I have a problem with. However, with the way this game works, the stress mechanic ruins the flow and forces this waiting game. Let me explain. A lot of the time, especially as you progress, you'll come across an area with several humans, let's say 3 to 5. In that same area, there will be maybe 1 or 2 throwable items. Do you see where I'm going with this? In order to stress all of these enemies, you either have to get them all gathered together so the effective area of one break will stress them all, or wait for the bottles to respawn. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but bottles and snowballs, etc. all respawn after a short delay, and even the environmental hazards reset. So this means you usually end up throwing the bottle, maybe stressing 2 enemies with one throw, run over there, scare them off, then go back to the spawn point and do it again. This game is very cute at first, and I was completely hooked after I played the demo during Steam Next Fest, as it somewhat reminded me of the Ware Cleaner, which was the very first review in this series. However, this gameplay loop gets extremely stale extremely quickly. The setup required to group up all the enemies is just more work than it's worth, especially considering when a human spots you, they are no longer stressed. So, if you try to gather them as close together as possible, any little screw up is going to force that waiting game again. It may seem like I'm being a little harsh, but I believe that the mechanics of this game are good. But the game is missing one crucial element for the flow. Again, I don't really mind having to complete extra steps to enable a stealth takedown. In many of my reviews, I have enthusiastically praised any sort of enemy design that requires extra thinking or creativity. Any sort of extra complication, assuming it's done well, of course. I am the guy who is willing to do the setup. However, I am also the guy who is going to get frustrated standing and staring waiting for a bottle to spawn. Here's what I propose. There needs to be at least one more option. Shu needs something that he can always or almost always do. Now, of course, there is a fine line here. If the ability is too strong or too readily available, then it completely ruins the balance of everything else. I mean, if you can spam a stress ability the same way that you can spam the scare ability, then what are we even doing? It would quite literally be busy work at that point. So, like I said, there's a fine line here that we need to find. Let me throw out some ideas. Let's modify the bait ability so it has a longer cooldown but can also stress. This of course would have some major implications to the overall game design, and I don't really like this idea. The bait ability is used frequently to try and pick up an item or hit a button. It needs the availability to be used liberally. Okay, so let's ignore the bait ability and instead just add an additional stress inducing ability. Give it an extra long cooldown, or perhaps even a limited number of uses per mission. So now when you approach an area with several humans, you could use the nearby item to stress some, then approach and use the stress ability on the rest. Now everyone is set up for a scare. Perhaps another idea would be collecting the bottles or other projectiles that you find around the map. Let's say you found 3 bottles in one area but you only used 1. Well, now when you go to the next area and there's multiple humans, you still have that inventory and can use it when you need to. I'm not here to say I have all the answers, but I feel strongly that the game in its current state is missing a crucial mechanic, and I just wanted to ramble a bit to get some options out there. You might think that everything I just said is a horrible idea and I have no idea what I'm talking about, and honestly, I can accept that, but tell me something better. It's missing something. With all of that said, my next point pretty much invalidates all of that. I think that is hilarious, so bear with me. Hoomanz is an evasion stealth game trapped within the framework of a stealth action game, or in other words, a stealth game that requires you to eliminate threats. So, I just gave these options on how to make eliminating enemies more effective or impactful, but in reality, I think you should eliminate the eliminating. Let me explain. Mission 12 in this game is so damn incredible. This is the final mission of the game and the boss-esque encounter of the volcano region. This mission is proof of my statement. In Mission 12, you cannot eliminate the humans that are just walking around. Your only option is to stay out of sight. This is an evasion stealth mission. However, you still have that elimination aspect, but you are simply focused on key targets. In this final mission, there are drones flying overhead, and you must scare off their operators. To do this, you must hit a button that is connected to the drone's controls, which will fear the operator. Then, you simply sneak up to said operator and scare him off. Rinse and repeat this process about 4 times, then hit the final button and you're good. This is where the game shines. This is where it all comes together. You don't have to waste your time picking up bottles or camping behind leaf piles. You avoid everyone except the key targets. They must be taken down, but doing so is much more engaging than the rest of the game. I know that hitting a button or switch doesn't sound that great, but the beauty is in sneaking past all the humans guarding it, then sneaking past more enemies guarding the actual drone operator. This mission still allows you to be the creepy cute forest protector frightening humans to such a degree that they are yeeted off the planet, but there's no waiting game. So there's really two ways of going about this to appease me, if you will. One option is to make the stress mechanic much more easily achievable. The other option is to leave all the mechanics as they are, but completely redo your mission design. The boss encounters are great and really play on the strengths of this game. If there were more missions in this style, the game would just be so much better, in my opinion. It's really tough to say what the correct answer is, and I'm really quite conflicted. I really enjoy running up and scaring off the humans, but getting them to that point is honestly just a complete drag by the end of the game. I was definitely burnt out before I even got to the lava. Pun intended? Perhaps the answer is just a bit of both. Hoomanz is so close to being so good, but a conflicting identity leaves me feeling disappointed. I was genuinely playing through that final level saying, "This is incredible! Why is there not more of this?" When you see the greatness that this game is capable of, it's almost frustrating not having that level of quality throughout. Maybe don't focus on scaring off all the humans and the loop will stay fresh for longer. I'm not sure. Perhaps these issues are of my own making with my desire to leave no human left unscared. At the end of the day, Hoomanz is absolutely worth playing for Mission 12 alone, or even just for the personality present throughout the game. I love this concept of being a creepy cute forest critter spreading fear throughout the human camps to take back my planet.